And we are now joined by Joey Logano, driver of the number 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford for Team Penske. Thanks for joining us, Joey.
Thank you.
We'll
Glad
go ahead
to be here.
We'll go ahead and open it right up to questions. We'll start right here in the middle, and then we'll go over to Chris Knight.
Vedant, president of Global Kid Media. Now, being a young racer, you've set so many records as being one of the youngest ones, and I can appreciate that being a young journalist. What's that been like for you, and what motivates you to keep going when you were younger?
That's really cool, man. That's awesome for you. Yeah, we do have a lot of similarities probably, and you stepped into tough situations, right? Here you are. How old are you? 12. And you're in here with a bunch of media members that have been here for way longer than 12 years. And, to step up in those situations and be mature way past your age, it takes a lot of courage, right? It takes a lot, and it's hard to do. And you learn at an accelerated rate because you've put yourself around people that are smarter than you, right? And that's how you learn. Similar for me is I moved up really young before I was ready and got put into very challenging positions. And because of that, it accelerated my career at a quicker rate than it would have if I was just raced around kids my own age. So it's harder, no doubt, but there's a bigger reward if you can battle through it and come out on the other end. And so it's kind of where I'm at now, and you're down in there getting ready and doing things like this. So that's awesome for you, man. That's great.
We're going to go to Chris, and then to Lee, and then back to Steve.
ChrisKnightCatchfans.com. Joey, with the average finish of 15th in the last 7 races, is that something for 22 team to be concerned about?
Oh, I wasn't ready for that. Okay. Not necessarily. I think obviously we want to be better than that, right? We want to be winning. But I think when you look at the way we've called some races to go for stage points, probably has a little bit to affect with that. Watkins Glen was just a horrible weekend. No excuse for that one. Pocono, we had our own set of issues that was a little bit unique, but we scored a bunch of stage points, but we didn't get the finish we wanted. So I can go through probably all the races and make an excuse for each one of them on why we finished where we did. But I wouldn't say our speed's been 15th, right? Maybe the last few, really Watkins Glen's kind of its own beast. So I kind of write that one off till we get back there next time. But really, I don't feel like our speed's been that far off. I do feel like the field has closed up a lot over the last few weeks from what we had early in the season, which just means we need to try to move ahead again. That's the biggest thing is as you get closer to the playoffs, everyone's got to start trying to find and dig deeper down inside and try to find that little extra. And, we're getting to that point of the season where you got to start finding it and be ready to come out, guns a-blazing when you start the playoffs, ready to rip. So I don't feel like we're far off. We're further ahead than we were last year and we won the championship. So I feel pretty confident about it.
We'll come down here to Lee, and then in the back to Steve and Roy.
Lee Spencer, RacingBoys.com. Over here.
Oh, you're right there. Wow.
It's all right. We were talking earlier about you doing radio this morning, and one of the things you mentioned is talking to your wife, Brittany, about navigating the politics in the sport and how you keep a list. And we talked to Ben Rhodes this morning, and he said even he kept a list, and he hasn't been around as long as you have. And I'm just kind of curious, how do you look at the people that are on the list that people know about, the list that we don't know about, and is it just a matter of caution when dealing with those people?
Yeah, I think it's just part of, sports that you have to kind of keep in mind of who you're competing against, not only yourself, but other rivalries. I think it's important to know a little bit of the status of what's going on because you don't want to get caught up in something that they're doing, right? Not just because you were close to it. So being aware of the situations is, I think, key. I think it's important to try to keep up with that as much as possible. You don't want to let it consume you, right? It's not the most important thing out there, but it is part of the game that we need to all, be aware of one way or the other. So, lean on my wife because I told him to surround myself with people smarter than me, and she's quite a bit smarter than I am. So that works out good for me.
And Brad said he lets NASCAR set the line, where that line is as far as aggression and too aggressive, and that it's, you know, kind of up to them to set where that line is. And would you agree with your teammate?
Yeah, I mean, there's no written rule, right? It's just kind of what you've seen in the past, and you kind of can read between the lines of what's okay and what's not.
All right, we'll go over here to your left in the back to Steve.
Steve Schweitzer of the Lasco Press. Joey, it's the first time they've used the PJ1 traction compound here at Michigan. What is your opinion, pro or con?
I have been all good with the PJ1 pretty much anywhere we've gone so far. I think it's done nothing but help and improve the racing, widen the racetrack out, which has been good. Obviously, first time here. We've all been in qualifying trim the first practice. We haven't touched it. I watched a little bit of truck practice. It looks like they were flirting with it a little bit, but they weren't really committing to it yet. It's pretty far up there. It might be a little bit too high, not much. But, you know, I think NASCAR's done a good job at, you know, trying to use, you know, the drivers, Goodyear teams trying to collaborate to try to understand what is the best places to put it to improve the racing even after the race. And coming back to you and say, well, what'd you think? Like, should we do this more or that more? And try to, you know, grow a notebook on how to improve it. Great. I think that's good. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with trying to make it better. I don't think the product is awful here to start with, but I do think, hey, you know, if we widen the racetrack out, there's more room to build runs, and you'll see more, you know, three-wide racing to where when the guy gets out there on the outside, he's not hanging on and sliding all the way to the wall and loses 10 spots, right, on a restart. So, you know, the PJ1 is something that we're all still learning about. We're learning about, you know, how it works at each surface. You know, it works different at Charlotte than it does at Michigan or than it does at Bristol and than it does at Kentucky, right? And the way it gets activated, the way it wears out, how much grip it actually puts back into the racetrack. Those are all things that we're trying to, as a team, we're trying to figure it out. As a sport, we're trying to figure it out. But I like that the avenue we're going down and playing with it.
We're going to come over here to Roy and then in the back to Taylor.
Yeah, Joey, you've had success at this track. You won 3 times. I think you've had like 15 top 10s in the last 10 years. Do you prefer this track with a single groove, multi-grooves? Does it matter to you?
I don't think so. I mean, you just have to be willing to adapt. You know, this is a good racetrack for Team Penske and the 22 team in particular. But, you know, you have to be willing to adapt because, you know, what it took to win here in the spring was completely different than what it took to win here the last few times. You know, so you just got to be willing to change it up. And it'll be different than the spring race. A lot of teams brought different cars back, different body builds. Everyone learned a lot the spring race that'll affect the race. And then, like we talked about, the traction compound up there, that can put a whole new set of questions into play. So you just got to be willing to adapt, even though it's a good track and you want to, you know, kind of continue that trend of what's worked for you. You want to keep going with it, but you got to be willing to step outside the box still. Thanks.
We're going to wrap in the back with Taylor.
Hi, Joey. Taylor DeSormo with MLive.com. There seems to be a lot of aggressiveness lately, especially last weekend at Watkins Glen. When you think about the drivers who are most likely to kind of lay a bumper on or do some really heavy, aggressive side drafting, who are some of the drivers that come to mind for you?
I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and name names, but there's plenty out there. It just seems like the way you got to race these days. You know, there's a time for it. You don't do it every lap. But there's a time that, you know, that aggression level gets you forward on the racetrack. There's times it puts you backwards in the fence, but you just gotta be smart on what you do and when you do it. I think there's a level that's accepted, and there's a line. It's like anything else.
Thanks.
All right, Joey. Thank you.
All right, great.
Good luck
Thank
this
you.
weekend.
Appreciate it.